Welcome to The Outlet, an OTG production.
Welcome to the NBA Outlet, presented by OTGBasketball.com. I'm Nick Fay. With me today is John Aiello. What's up, John?
Yo, what's going on, man? It's no longer the Three Musketeers this week. Parth is out, so me and you holding down the fort today.
Yeah, we're trying to get this W right here. So we're going to talk playoffs, coaching vacancies, and we're going to compare NBA players to superheroes in the new Captain America Civil War movie. So should be a great show. I'm pretty excited. But let's get this thing started right off. John, what do you think about the Heat versus Toronto series?
I got to say, man, despite the lopsided series we've seen with like Cleveland and Atlanta and Cleveland and Detroit and Golden State and Houston, even though this is a 1-1 series, this is probably the worst series I've seen so far in the playoffs. They've been close at the end, and there was, Kyle Lowry hit the crazy shot in overtime, and and then the second game went to overtime too. But in terms of the basketball, it is just horrible. It's basically just like it seems like it's like 2005 basketball, where it seems like it's a lot of isolation. Toronto at the end of the game was just doing straight, high pick and rolls. It was so horrible to watch. I don't know how you feel about it, but I honestly haven't been enjoying this series at all, and it's been not entertaining at all.
Yeah, these two teams have been really inconsistent. I think Miami's haven't been in both games, double-digit turnovers, not great basketball, sloppy stuff. You got DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry struggling. The Heat kind of just all over the place, inconsistent. I don't think it's been good basketball. I guess I would say it's been somewhat entertaining just because they've both gone to overtime and the endings have been close. So there's some excitement, but the overall play, I think, is just not good. And I don't think either of these teams could really do anything to Cleveland.
Yeah, and even though they've gone to overtime, the overtimes have been horrible. Like, I know in game one, Toronto didn't. They hit that full court shot with Lowry, and then it went to overtime, and they were terrible. And then Miami was terrible in game two after they came back and tied it. And you would think they had the momentum. Toronto was up most of that fourth quarter, and then Miami made a comeback. I know Dragic hit some big shots. And then, Kyle Lowry hit some big shots to get back in it. Then he had that horrible possession. That was the one of the worst game-ending shots I've ever seen in terms of he basically wasted like 10 seconds off the clock and then took a fading 27-footer. I get you want him to take the last shot, but I thought that was just –
That was terrible.
That was just terrible. And then the overtime, Miami scored like 2 points. It's been entertaining, I guess, because they've gone overtime. But other than that, the basketball's been really bad.
Yeah, that shot by Lowry that you talked about, that was terrible. Like, no reason. There wasn't even any help defender stepping up. So he at least could have tried to get to the elbow and shot a fadeaway. He didn't. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that was just like, and I get that he wants to take the last shot, but you have to at least give your team a chance to win. And the way he's playing, he's not going to hit a shot like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, he hit the half court shot, but you can't expect to hit some crazy shot at the end of the game. In my opinion, they should have, with 5 or 6 seconds left, he should have tried to attack. And they still would have left Miami with maybe like a second left. And at that point, it's kind of like if you lose off that, then you lose. But you have to give your team a chance to win because the way they were playing, they easily could have lost in overtime. And they're just lucky that Miami's so hot and cold, and they happen to be cold in that overtime.
Yeah, that definitely is an interesting series. Let's talk Atlanta and Cleveland. This series I had a lot of hope for going in. So far, it looks like I was completely wrong about it.
Yeah, I kind of thought that, the Millsap and LeBron matchup would be interesting. I think Millsap could have played decent defense on him and helped kind of slow him down somewhat. But, that 3-point barrage that Cleveland had in game two, I think, and Atlanta complained about how they were being unprofessional, which it's in my opinion, it's kind of like play some defense. Like if you're watching that game, Dhani Jones had like wide open three, like all these guys had wide open threes and they were making them. So you can't. It's not like they had LeBron and Kyrie Irving out there in the fourth quarter and they were, LeBron was still going hard to the rim. Cleveland.
It's the playoffs.
It's the playoffs, yeah. And Yeah, I think Atlanta has been very disappointing. They've been kind of a streaky team all year. They started playing well towards the end of the year. They played well in the last series against Boston, but obviously Boston didn't have Avery Bradley after game one. So, or was it game one or game two that Bradley got hurt? Whatever it was. I mean, Atlanta's been disappointing. I don't know. I think they got to do something in the offseason with Teague. I think Schroeder is definitely their guy, because there's times in the game where Schroeder brings them down, and there's times where Schroeder elevates his team, and there's times the same thing with Teague where Teague just isn't really doing much, and then they just need to get some consistency from the point guard play. Both are good players, but I think they gotta get one of those guys. They got to make one of those guys like their main point guard, and they got to get a guy who's a backup. Because those guys are both starters on a lot of other teams, but they can't have them on the same team.
And they might have some holes to fill this summer because Horford and Bazemore are both free agents. I know there was a lot of rumor about trading Teague during the regular season at the deadline, so definitely could probably see that potential move over the summer, especially if the Hawks lose a player or two. But like you said, they've been a disappointment. After watching them against the Celtics, I thought, maybe they can compete with the Cavs, not beat them. I didn't think they'd win the series, but I thought maybe they'd win a game or two. But right now they just look terrible. I think they're kind of pretty demoralized after that 3-point barrage. And I don't want to hear anybody complaining about somebody else running up the score in a playoff game. Like, you're in the playoffs, you should be able to compete with any team that you face. So don't complain, compete harder.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on that. And I think Cleveland deserves a lot of credit. They played really well. But a lot of times when I watch Cleveland, especially when they're playing against the East, I can't tell if they're a really good team, like if they're an elite team that is comparable to the West, or if they're just head and shoulders a bunch above a weak Eastern Conference.
I agree. And I feel the Cavs have another level to hit. Like, I just feel like, LeBron hasn't really, he's not in that super LeBron mode that he gets into, like last year in the Eastern Conference Finals and in the finals. So I think that they probably still have another level to hit, but I don't know if anybody in the Eastern Conference is going to push them that far.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that they're not going to get because if Miami had Bosch, I think they would give Cleveland a real test, but Miami's so hot and cold. There's no way they're going to get anywhere farther than this series, because you can't be that inconsistent and expect to go far in the playoffs. I don't care who the competition is. When you're, going in droughts where you're not scoring for like 4 minutes, that's a big problem. And so I think Cleveland's not going to get enough of a test until the finals. And I think that could be an issue. But another thing with Cleveland, I feel like they still haven't gotten that lineup where I'm like, okay, this is the lineup that can compete with Golden State. Like, I think they match up with San Antonio pretty well. And I think they match up with Oklahoma City pretty well. But when Golden State goes small with Draymond at the 5, I still don't know. I wonder what they would do. I wonder if they would put maybe like Kevin Love at the 5, which I feel like they haven't done enough of in the playoffs so far. I would like to see Kevin Love at the 5, and then maybe LeBron at the 4, and then Richard Jefferson or Shumpert, and then J.R. Smith and Kyrie, or maybe Dellavedova mixed in there. So I want to see them kind of practice that lineup more, as opposed to they've been kind of throwing a lot of different lineups out there, which is fine. They're winning, but I think at some point they got to practice this lineup that's going to eventually compete with Golden State, because Golden State, even with Steph out, they seem like they're a lock for the finals. San Antonio is playing well, but I still feel like Golden State's almost unbeatable at this point.
Yeah, well, I think a lot depends on Steph. If Steph's healthy, I don't think there's any way they don't make the finals, really. But if he's banged up, I think the Spurs probably have a good chance.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah, and like you mentioned about the Cavs, yeah, it's interesting. You know what I would almost like to see? If they really want to match the small ball, I know Kevin Love's a great player, but maybe you sit him and you play LeBron at the 5.
Okay.
If they're playing Draymond, because, he's matching up perfectly against Draymond, right. And LeBron's not going to take it from, Draymond physically, tries to outfight everybody, and LeBron's not going to let that happen in the finals. So
yeah, that's a good point. I think against Golden State, I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if you saw LeBron at the 5, and then a lot of Kevin Love at the 5. And then, a lot of Tristan Thompson at the 5. I feel like against that team, unless Bogut's out there, Channing Frye can't get many minutes. Mozgov, I don't know if has played at all in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's funny because last year in the playoffs, he was so huge for them, and he's probably the reason they got to the finals, and now he doesn't even get to play.
Yeah, and now it's kind of like, well, we gave Tristan Thompson $80 million. We have to play him.
Yeah.
we have to play him at center. So
And I think Tristan Thompson probably is a better fit for them at center for this team right now. You know, when Kevin Love's clicking, Kyrie's clicking, LeBron's clicking, they don't need somebody. Moskov doesn't really do a whole lot. Like, you know, he can score a little bit on offense. He's a big body. He rebounds. His defense is okay, but I think Tristan Thompson's athleticism sticks out, and that extra hustle plays. You know, he's getting them an extra possession at least once a quarter. You know
yeah,
that.
yeah, Mozgov is a really good rim protector, but I think Tristan Thompson makes them so versatile on defense, especially when they're going smaller. Sometimes even if they have Kevin Love at the 4, but he guards the pick and roll so well, and we saw it last year in the final where he would guard Steph Curry and some other guards, and he seemed really comfortable out there. He didn't look foolish out there. And Mozgov, you can't, even though Mozgov's a good rim protector, he can't do that. He's not on the.
And he's a lot slower than Tristan.
Yeah, he is. So I think Tristan gives him a lot of versatility, but I still think they definitely got to get a matchup, against that can work against Golden State. Because right now I don't know if I've seen that lineup yet.
Yeah. It'll be interesting if they're so hot right now shooting the 3, especially J.R. Smith, who's shooting over 50% from 3, if they can carry this on to the finals. Because if they carry this on to the finals, that's going to be huge. Staying hot, though, for that long is tough.
Yeah, I don't see them staying hot, especially how they were in game 2. And I mean, they got really hot in that fourth quarter, or in the fourth quarter yesterday against Atlanta. Atlanta totally blew that game. They were up by I didn't watch much of the game. I just walked into my friend's house and I saw that Atlanta was up by, I think, 12 or 13 in the fourth quarter. I think it might be off on that. But then, next thing I look, Cleveland's down by 3, and then they ended up winning the game. Channing Frye played really well. I think he had 27 points. But I think the X factor going forward, what you're going to get from LeBron, and Kyrie's played well, and Kevin Love's played well, and JR's played well. Iman Shumpert, in my opinion, is an X factor because he's aggressive on D. He's not afraid to get up in guys' faces, but he's got to play well offensively. He's got to play well enough where, RJ has been a consistent three-point shooter where he's going to be out there, where they can rely on him to be out there in games. But Shumpert is always good on D, but his shot hasn't been reliable. But he's had some nice plays in the postseason. I think he's a big X factor for them going forward.
It's funny you say that because I was thinking Shumpert in my head as well because, he had a nice play yesterday. I don't know if you saw, he had a nice putback dunk, I think, in the second quarter. It was pretty athletic play. It's nice to see that after, he had that ACL injury a few years ago. If he can get his offense, not even great, he just needs to be okay on offense and then he gives them a nice little pop in the wing position, especially if they play Golden State in the finals because they'll need that extra wing player.
Yeah. And I mean, I was obviously, as a Knicks fan, I was really high on Shumpert when he came in that rookie year. We got him in the first round. I was kind of like, who is this guy? Why do we get him? And he was really good. And then he had the injuries. I think he was supposed to be in the dunk contest, but he had to withdraw his name because of the injuries. But I think that the issue with him is his shooting is inconsistent. He's inconsistent on offense in terms of his decision making. He makes he can go on stretches where he looks really good, and you're like, oh my God, this guy should be starting on like every team. And then he goes in stretches where it's like, how is this guy even playing? He makes a lot of careless plays and turnovers and things like that. So he's really got to step up. And I like what I've seen from him so far. I think the big thing for him is just being healthy enough where he can get consistent play. Because I think almost for him it's more of a mental thing. Obviously there's some physical things too where he's got to be 100% healthy, but I think mentally he's just got to get consistent minutes and be healthy physically where he can be comfortable mentally and kind of have his confidence get going again.
I agree. I think he never got back to the level he was before the injury in New York. But moving on to the Western Conference, we'll talk about Golden State and Portland. What do you think about this series?
So I didn't watch much of. I watched some of game 1, and I don't think I watched. Is it game 3 is tonight, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna make sure it's game 3 or game 4. Yeah, I didn't watch much of game 2. I watched a lot of game 1 when Klay Thompson had the really good first quarter. And I know CJ McCollum and Lillard, I think, are shooting combined 40% or like 38%. So Golden State's making it tough for him. And I just don't think I was really high on those guys. I kind of was overestimating how good they were. And I kind of thought that they could carry them to maybe even winning this series with Steph missing. If Steph is going to miss a lot of games. But I think that they just lack – I think their lack of talent in the front court is finally catching up with them against a team like Golden State. I think when Golden State goes small, I think it just presents a big problem. for that team because I don't think because they don't really have anybody that can go small to guard Draymond. Because Aminu's he's too slight a build. Plumlee's not quick enough. Ed Davis isn't quick enough, and so it presents a big problem. I think when they're guarding that small lineup for Portland. I just think they don't have enough scores besides McCollum and Lillard too to really pick up the load when they're struggling.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they have enough talent offensively to compete with them, and I think this kind of just shows you how good of team Golden State is all around. They have so many players at so many different positions, and I think Parth and I had talked about this in the past. Is the Warriors all the players on the Warriors can do something with the ball. If that's shooting, passing, dribbling, playmaking, they all can do something. You see some players in the NBA that are really offensively limited and they can't do much with the ball. They get the ball and they just pass it back, or they're just constantly setting screens and the only thing they can do is make layups. I feel like everybody on Golden State has basketball skills.
Yeah, they got a lot of players who kind of like I want to say they're players almost like they kind of like triangle offense players where they can do a little bit of everything. And now so many players in the NBA where it's like it's all about finding your niche. It's all about being either a great shooter to stick around, or being a great rebounder, or being a great shot blocker. And they have guys that aren't really great at anything, but they're all very good at, like you said, passing, playing defense, shooting. So they're not really elite in any certain category, but they're just all around good players. And they're kind of like that baseball term, 5-tool players. I feel like they have a lot of those guys who can do everything, and it shows you that. And I think the big key for them, and he's been the key for them all year, I think he's more important to them than Steph Curry is, but Draymond, because when he goes small, or when they go small with that lineup, I mean, he can guard the bigs, and it's such a problem for the other team on defense because he's tough to guard off the dribble. He's strong enough to play down low, and he's a good rebounder. He's obviously an elite defender, and I think he's getting more credit now, but I still feel like if he were the one that were hurt, I feel like they would be having more trouble with Portland, or they would have had more trouble with Houston than they would with Steph Curry with Steph Curry hurt.
I think Draymond definitely doesn't get enough credit. I think that guy is tough as rocks. Like, he's undersized, he's banging with these huge bodies in the paint, and he's not giving up an inch. That's what's crazy to me about him. Like, he competes with guys that are so much bigger than him on a regular basis, and he wins out. So, and I think like he does have a huge impact. It's tough to say though, because I feel like maybe if Draymond did miss time, the Warriors would just probably go a little bit more offensive minded and just try to score a lot more. But I could see how it could hurt them because that small ball lineup, like you mentioned, is so deadly. And then the pick and roll with Draymond is so deadly because a lot of bigs end up in this in-between area when they get the ball and they can't do much with it. They just pass the ball back out, or maybe they shoot a jumper. Draymond's comfortable enough where he can handle the ball, and if you give him enough space, he's going to make a great pass. So I think that pick and roll with him and Steph is just so deadly. And they don't even have that right now, and when they do have it, that's just – I feel like that's one of the biggest game changers for the Warriors in general.
Yeah, and he was never a great shooter, but last year he improved, and this year he's been I don't know what his numbers are, but he's definitely improved as a 3-point shooter. And so now you can use him as a pick and pop guy. So you have the versatility where you can pick and pop, and then if he gets the ball on the perimeter and someone's guarding him, he still has the versatility to take him off the dribble and pass the teammates and play make. I mean, that the other thing that I think people are forgetting about is how good Sean Livingston is, and I kind of forgot about it too. But I mean, this guy was really good for Brooklyn a couple years ago, and I think he's tough on defense, and it gives Damian Lillard, I think, a different matchup. Actually they've been putting Thompson on it, but Sean Livingston, he's long, he's 6'7", and he's quick on his feet, and they've been playing Livingston on McCollum. Do you know? I know the first game they were playing Thompson on Lillard a lot. I can't remember what they were doing with Livingston.
Yeah, I think they've been putting him on McCollum, or they've been, they switch it up depending on who's on the floor and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's not like they had some slouch coming in to fill in for Steph Curry. Sean Livingston's a really good NBA player, and he's tough to guard in the post. He's really got that mid-range jumper down. I mean, Golden State is just an all-around, pretty much perfect team when you look at it because they're not weak in anything. At times they get beat on the boards, but even when they get beat on the boards, their games are still really close because they have that ability to get hot at any time, and the whole team gets hot. And they're just so tough to beat. And I don't think I've seen a team that seems like they have such a mental a mental advantage over every team that they play. Like it's like whenever a team could be up by 20 points or 25 points in the fourth quarter, but as soon as Golden State hits a couple threes, I feel like the other team would start to get tense because they just know what can happen when Steph hits a couple threes or Clay hits a couple threes. The whole team rides that momentum, and it's crazy to watch.
Yeah, they're oozing with confidence. I mean, this team is never out of a game. They could be down 30, and I'm still not turning off the game because, they easily could come back in that game just with their offensive ability, defensive ability, and, they put fear in the other team. But back to what you were saying about Sean Livingston, shout out to him. Horrific injury he suffered back on the Clippers, and now to come back and play at a high level in the NBA, I definitely miss him in Brooklyn, so it's great to see him play well. But let's move on to Spurs and OKC. This has been an interesting series. The OKC, I just feel like, is always letting everybody down. We've also had a couple controversial calls in this game, or non-calls. So what are your thoughts about this series?
Well, I actually missed having to get up early for work. I missed game 2, which is unfortunate because I heard it was incredible, and I kind of expected it to be close, but I didn't think OKC was going to actually win in San Antonio after how they played in game 1. But yeah, that the non-call where Waiters shoved Ginobili is apparently one of the worst calls in the history, like one of the worst non-calls in the history. It just it was so blatant. But from what I've seen from OKC, it's just the same OKC, and it's the same story with them that people have been saying since OKC and Russ first made the finals. Like, oh, this team is gonna be here for years to come. But their biggest issue was always their crunch time offense, and it's the same thing. And I don't know if it's an issue. People kind of complain about Billy Donovan not really changing anything from what Scott Brooks was doing. But I almost feel like, I just feel like these guys are so smart. I find it hard to believe they're not changing anything. I almost feel like it's KD and Russ don't trust anybody but themselves. Obviously, you can't like speculate it because we're not in the locker room and we're not in their heads. We don't know what they're actually doing. But I find it hard to believe that Billy Donovan and Russ are saying, or Billy Donovan and Scott Brooks saw this happen over and over again, and they didn't make any adjustments. If fans are saying that and analysts are saying that, there's no way they're not saying it and they're not seeing it. I just feel like these guys, they have an issue with maybe not trusting their teammates and they want to do it themselves. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I was starting to think that as well myself, just because, Scott Brooks, I don't think he was ever an amazing coach or crazy good, but Billy Donovan, you expect a new coach to come in and change things. And I'm assuming he changed some stuff, and it just looks like the team is kind of just set in their ways. And like you said, KD and Westbrook don't really trust their teammates. And sometimes you can see why, and then other times it's just like, you're trying to take on 3 or 4 guys at once. It's just not going to work out. You don't see that, the Cavs are doing it a little bit. You see crisp ball movement. Same thing with the Warriors, same thing with the Spurs. And that's not something you consistently see on OKC. And I think that hurts them because they just rely so much on these 2 guys, and it allows the defense to kind of just focus in on those 2, especially when they know they're not going to pass the ball. And I think OKC showed in the series that they have the talent to compete with the Spurs, but they're just mentally not putting it together, and they're making a lot of mental mistakes. They're not executing, and they're not trusting their teammates. So I feel like the Spurs are still going to end up winning the series, but OKC is just going to be a letdown.
Yeah, and I hate to say it because they have 2 of the most talented players. They're both top 5 players when they're on a roll, without a doubt. I almost wonder if they need to, because I wonder if you trade one, if one of them would be unhappy, or if you need to just get rid of both of them and start over. I don't know, but it's so hard to say get rid of those 2 guys, but we've seen it for so long that they've had the same issue over and over again, and they haven't reconciled it at all. And so I just wonder if they need a big drastic change in that organization. It's crazy to even think about getting rid of one of those guys, let alone both. But you just one would think that after they've had this same issue for so long that it would change, but nothing's changed. And I just don't have any confidence. I would love to see them get it going and win the title, but I just don't have any confidence they're going to do that.
You know what I think is an interesting thing I feel like maybe if they had a third really good player, it would help them. And I don't know if people remember this, but I feel like this trade should haunt the Thunder. They had the option to trade for Enes Kanter or Brook Lopez, and the trade for Brook Lopez was all set. and they elected to go with the Cantor trade instead, and they ended up trading the same pieces really going forward. So, I mean, I know personally I'd rather have Brook Lopez over Enes Kanter any day of the week because offensively he's bringing more to it probably, and he's a better defender. So I think if they had gotten Brook, I think that would have been a huge boost for them, and it kind of relieved some of the pressure from Westbrook and KD.
Yeah, and I know the big thing with that was they didn't want to give up a first round pick for Lopez because I mean at the time, even though Lopez was playing well, he had the foot injuries and any 9 times out of 10 when a big has foot injuries, it's basically doom going forward.
Yeah.
But he's played really well this year and it looks like he's going to be healthy. So I can see why they chose Cantor, but I mean it's hard to believe trading for Cantor and then giving him all that money if you can't even start him. Like I mean if they had Lopez, yeah, they would be an incredible team.
A Westbrook and Lopez pick and roll would be
dominant, yeah. And not to mention too, they had the option to I mean they had to basically keep 3 of their 4 big or 3 of their 4 tandem or group, whatever you want to call it, when they were younger, to keep KD, Russ, Harden, and Ibaka, and they had the option to keep Harden. I was always saying that they should have kept Harden over Ibaka, but I
can see it. I mean, the one thing with Ibaka that's hurt him, I think he was improving a lot going forward. Then he had those injuries, and like he hasn't been like I know for a while he didn't have much of an offensive game. Then he started adding more and more into jump shot. Defensively, he's good, but like he hasn't added since then. And I think maybe the next thing for him would be trying to create, dribble the ball, maybe take it inside a little bit more because he's getting a lot of kickouts and it seems like he's constantly just sitting at the 3-point line. I don't know if that's because of Westbrook and Durant or by scheme, but, I think that's hurting him.
Yeah, and actually, I remember when it happened, I wanted to see them trade Westbrook and keep because at the time Westbrook was having, it was people were talking about the chemistry issues with him and Durant, and Westbrook was, seen as being out of control. And I wanted them to keep Ibaka because Ibaka was like this young player that people were saying could have been the next KG with how athletic he was and how impactful he was defensively and his mid-range shooting. And then, Ibaka never put it together. They traded Harden, and that turns out to be one of the worst trades of all time. And then, Westbrook could turn out to be a great player, and obviously KD's still a great player, but there's a lot of different ways they could have went with those 4 guys, and it could have totally changed their franchise. Because I just feel like maybe the Westbrook and KD tandem is best served. They're best served if they're separated.
Yeah, I could definitely see how that trade definitely haunts them. But moving forward, let's talk about the coaching carousel in the NBA. A lot of changes this year. First, I guess we'll talk about the new coaches. So far we got the Lakers. They signed Luke Walton. The Suns re-upped Earl Watson. The Nets signed Kenny Atkinson. And the Wizards signed Scott Brooks. So what do you think sticks out to you that what guy do you think is going to work out the best?
Did you say Minnesota with Tom Thibodeau?
Oh, yep. And Minnesota with Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah. That's I think the 2 best fits are Minnesota with Thibodeau and the Lakers getting Luke Walton. I think, Luke Walton played for the Lakers, won a couple of championships there. And I feel like, I think he's a West Coast guy. I don't think he was going anywhere, anywhere other than maybe like Sacramento or the Lakers or Phoenix or, or maybe staying in Golden State. So I think that's a great fit. It's a young team where he can grow with, and he can kind of grow their team from the ground up because they have such a young team. They got some good young players, and it'll be interesting to see what their offense looks like next year. There's no doubt it's going to be much better than what Byron Scott put on the floor. But I think the best fit is Minnesota with Tom Thibodeau. I wanted the Knicks to look at him, and I just obviously Phil Jackson did not. But I think that's such a great fit. They got some young players. They got a lot of talent. I think they're going to be without a doubt a playoff team next year. I think the one thing that this team was missing was a great coach because you got Karl Anthony Towns, who's already like a top 20 player. Wiggins is a top 30 player. And then Zach LaVine came along strong at the end of the year. Rubio, when he's healthy, is a good NBA player. And Shabazz Muhammad is a great player off the bench too. So, this team is just stacked with young talent. And I think if they put together a couple veteran players who actually play, because they had KG, but KG can't really do anything anymore. Tayshaun Prince played way too much. But they need some veterans who can actually play and play, 20 minutes a game, 25 minutes a game, and play impactful minutes, not guys who are basically like on the floor dragging the whole time.
Yeah, no, I definitely could see a veteran presence helping. I love the Tip signing as well. Think that's a lock for this team to be in the playoffs for years to come. And definitely I see them making the finals hopefully in the future, as long as everyone takes the proper steps forward. And the one thing you mentioned, they have so many good young players, and these young players are going to get better. And you're going to see this team's defense just improve so much from Thibodeau.
No, I would say I think they have the capability to be a really like an elite, especially with Thibodeau now. They've been the capabilities to be an elite defensive team because Karl-Anthony Towns at center. He's obviously a great shot blocker. Plus, he can guard guards on the wing. Wiggins has shown the ability to be an elite defender. Levine is athletic enough to be elite if he just is aggressive enough on D. Rubio's can pick the pocket of anyone. So the pieces are there. And I think the West is going to be really interesting to see what the West looks like next year because Phoenix has a lot of talent. I'm not sure if I'm big on the Earl Watson signing there. I kind of thought they should went with someone else. He didn't really show me much when he filled in for the interim duties. But Utah, if they're healthy, they're going to be really good. The Clippers had the injuries. It's likely or probable that one of their big three is broken up and goes somewhere else. Houston's a really good team with Harden. They just need a better coach, or maybe they just need to change this. They need to make some switches. They could be really good next year. So it'll be interesting to see what the West looks like. OKC, who knows what's going to happen with Durant. It could be a lot of changes in the West next year.
Yeah, it definitely could. So be a great time for the Timberwolves to step up. I like that signing. I like the signing that my Nets made with Kenny Atkinson. From what I read about this guy works hard. He's great at player development. I know Jeremy Lin's spoken highly about him. Horford, Korver, a lot of guys in the Hawks. So, and I think something the Nets need is a coach that can come in and develop talent because the lack of draft picks is going to really hurt them. So they're going to have to get their talent from all kinds of places.
Yeah, and I felt like Brooklyn wasn't going to get a guy like Tom Thibodeau. They weren't going to get the big names. I feel like their only hope was maybe getting someone kind of like a guy like this, who was an assistant coach. He's looking for his first gig, who's got a lot of potential because Brooklyn, even though it's in a big market, it's not a promising destination in the sense that they don't, like you said, they don't have a lot of draft picks going forward. So I think they need a young coach like this. Obviously, they can always sign guys in free agency, so they're not doomed at all. But it does, their outlook isn't as bright as some other franchises and some of the other teams that had openings. So I think this was a good signing for them. I think it was a good fit. The other guy I was kind of looking at for them was like David Blatt because I think it would have been like a similar situation and a similar fit like Atkinson. But there's still a lot of vacancies left. I mean, it's crazy how many people are getting fired.
Yeah, talking about vacancies, that's our next topic right here. We got the Pacers with the opening, the Knicks, the Grizzlies, the Rockets, the Kings. But let's start with your Knicks. Who would you like to see fill in that vacancy?
Well, there's three guys that come to mind. I think my first choice would be Frank Vogel. He has some ties to Phil Jackson, not really close ties, but I think he was a scout for Phil Jackson when he was with the Lakers. And I think from what I've read about him, he seems like he really believes in the triangle offense if he actually wants to run it. I mean, I'm not saying that they should still run that, but I think that's a decent choice. I would love Dave Yeager too, but I feel like he's not going to – he butted heads with Memphis's management, and I don't know if he's going to want to run the triangle offense with Phil. But those are my two guys. I'd be cool with David Blatt too, but the only thing that worries me with David Blatt is being in a big market like New York. I know that media members kind of said when he was with Cleveland that he had a tendency to, when questions were posed on him, I guess kind of questioning it, not even really questioning his ability, but he would always kind of flaunt the fact that he won championships in Europe. He's like, no, I won championships in Europe. Like this, so I felt like he has a chip on his shoulder that, because he won championships overseas, but not in the US, that people still think he's unproven. I think he has a chip on his shoulder because of that. So I wonder how that would go if he kind of acted the same way with the New York media members. I kind of wonder if that would go well. That's my biggest concern with that. But I still think he's a talented coach, and I think that the firing was undeserving for him. Because I think he's got a lot of talent, but we'll see.
Yeah, I like the idea of Frank Vogel going there. I mean, I was really surprised the Pacers let him go because I did not think they were that great of a team this year, roster-wise. They were really inconsistent playing. I don't think that's much on the coach. So I was surprised to let him go. I think he's a good coach, and I think he'd probably help the Knicks get towards the playoffs next season. I don't know if he'd get them in there, but he'd get them in the right direction, I think, out of the other two choices.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great coaches in the NBA, and I don't want to say him being a top 10 coach because I don't. I mean, I'm not like listing out who my top 10 coaches are, but I mean, he's up there. He's a great coach, I think. And like you said, I don't think the roster he had in Indiana was that good. So I mean, Larry Bird, I think people think of him as like a great GM, but I don't know if he's done that great of a job. Like I think they had, I mean, Frank Vogel, like Lance Stevenson hasn't been anything good since he was with Frank Vogel. You know, and then
Same with
Larry
Roy
Bird,
Hibbert.
yeah, Roy Hibbert, you know, in LA this year, he struggled. I mean, I find it hard to believe that it's just kind of crazy that they fired him after he did such a great job with this team every year. Last year, even with the Paul George injury, they were almost in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know what Larry Bird wants. You know, some of these
Like,
owners,
how are you gonna get that much better with a new coach? I guess Larry Bird's theory was, I guess he wrote this in like a book or something, or he was quoted saying he thinks you can only have a coach for like 3 years because the players start to tune them out or something. But
I
I
mean,
from what I heard, his press conference really didn't good reasoning for firing Vogel. So
yeah, and I've heard Indiana press members and media members really, really dogging him and getting into him for the firing. I mean, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I don't know what they're going to do going forward.
yeah,
But
like
I mean, they're not a big market. Yeah, they have Paul George and they got a couple good young players, but I mean, I'm not sure what he was going for with Frank Vogel there. I don't know.
who do you think they could get? Like I heard Mark Jackson as a possibility, but I don't even know who else I've really heard.
Yeah, so I've heard I saw Sacramento likes Jaeger. Indiana, I thought I saw likes Nate McMillan, and yeah, I
Oh
heard Mark
yeah,
Jackson. I heard Brian Shaw, two guys that I'm like, why?
Shaw didn't have much success at all in Denver,
Yeah,
and he didn't really have good control of the team. I guess there was an issue with like cell phones or something during film and practice. So I don't know. That scares me.
this is Mark Jackson, or I mean, Brian Shaw.
This is Shaw in Denver.
Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, the way because to be a coach, like Budenholzer's kind of soft spoken, so like I just kind of question how good a coach can be if they're kind of soft spoken. And Brian Shaw seems like that, you know. Like I think it's important to be able to grab the attention of the players and have authority over the players. And when you're soft spoken and you don't have, I don't want to say a great personality, but you just don't have much authority, or you don't give off like you have a lot of authority and you don't feel really confident. I feel like it's tough for players to gravitate towards that and respect it. So I'm not big on either of those guys. Mark Jackson would be interesting. He played in Indiana. I'm sure the fans love him there, so that would be an interesting choice. But he had so much fallout with the management in Golden State and with his assistant coaches. I think it's going to be tough for him to get a job anywhere else.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how he does. But let's talk about the Grizzlies. You know, they let go of Dave Yeager, which another move I did not expect. I mean, how do you let go of this guy? They made the playoffs and they had two of their best players injured most of the season. And I mean, they competed in the playoffs. They didn't win a game, but you know, they played hard and he got the most out of guys who really aren't that great of NBA players.
Yeah, from what I read, this wasn't so much of them firing him based off performance. It was more based off how the management and kind of like a Tom Thibodeau thing with Chicago, but based off how the management was interacting with Yeager. He was, I guess, very upset at the roster turnover and the roster that they gave him. So I think that they were very offended that he wanted to interview for other jobs. I guess that was kind of like the last straw from what I read about it. So not a bright outlook for this team. You look at Mike Conley is a free agent this year.
He's likely
Zach
gone.
Randolph. What did you say?
I said he's likely gone, especially with
Oh
Yeager
yeah,
gone. I feel like he's out.
I think without question, I think he's gone. But it'll be interesting to see what they do going forward because you know they're not a young team. They don't really have any good Marcus. I feel like they need to blow it up. You can get some value for Marcus Gasol, especially for a team that's looking. I mean, he's a great center. He's a top 5 center when he's healthy. He's dominant offensively and defensively. But other than that, they don't have a lot of pieces on this team. So they're not a team in terms of the future. And I don't know who would want to coach there. And I can't even really think of any, good candidates for that for that job.
Yeah, I mean, this management obviously has an issue. I think they didn't get along with Lionel Hollins either. So, I mean, something's going on over there. But I really don't know who's going to fill this spot either, especially because they just announced today that he was let go. So there hasn't been this much speculation yet. So something to keep an eye on going forward, especially like you said, not a lot of talent, and they're likely to lose Conley. So,
Yeah.
but let's talk about a team that, has some good talent and maybe a top 5, top 10 player in James Harden, the Houston Rockets. So
yeah, I like Houston to get Dave Yeager. Actually, I think he would be a great fit for that team. And I think his personality and his the way he basically just he puts defense first. I think that's what the kind of, and I think Frank Vogel would be a good fit too, but that's the kind of guy that I think James Harden needs as a coach, a guy that's going to get on him. And I feel like Dave Yeager is not going to be afraid to rip into him. And you can't have a coach that's going to be, I don't know about Kevin McHale, but JB Bickerstaff seemed like he was maybe tentative. He just seemed like the kind of guy that'd be tentative towards ripping into James Harden or something like that. And I feel like that's what Harden needs, is a guy who, as a coach, is going to be on him, and a coach who's going to preach defense. And so I think Yeager and Vogel will be great fits there.
Yeah, I like both those guys. Yeager, I think, would bring some defense and some toughness. And Vogel, maybe he could work with James Harden, like, how Paul George is a great two-way player. I think James Harden has plenty of potential in playing good defense. It's just a matter of wanting to do it. He's a strong guy. He's quick. I'm sure we see his moves on the offensive end. There's no reason he can't be a way better defender. And Vogel could probably get them out of that. And I think either one of those guys is going to bring a lot more discipline to this team, and that's something they really need.
Yeah, and Harden, I mean, we've seen flashes when he actually puts his mind to it. He's a really good defender because he's so long, and like you said, he's strong, he's quick. It's just the matter of him, doing it in every position and just wanting to be a great defender, which a lot of guys don't have it. They just want to score.
Exactly. You got to want it on both ends. But let's talk about a team that, has a good amount of talent. They've just been interesting to watch for the last few seasons. Management's a mess. And, we knew George Karl was going to get fired all year, and that's the Sacramento Kings. Who do you think is going to fill this job?
Well, I know I saw today that their top choice is Dave Yeager. But, Sacramento, it's just – I don't even know what to think about this franchise because they have Darren Collison's a good player. Obviously, Boogie Cousins is great. But I think they need to start over. I think they need to trade Cousins. I find it hard to believe he's going to be playing with them next year. Unless – I'm assuming they're going to bring in a coach first. I don't think they would – I think it makes the destination more appealing. But I think they need to get rid of Boogie Cousins. And I think this franchise is just in such turmoil because they're looking at like 30 head coaches right now, and I feel like they don't even know where they want to go. They're interviewing everybody. They were interviewing, I think, like Mark Jackson, David Blatt. I guess I'm assuming they're going to interview Dave Yeager, the assistant coach, Tisdale for the Heat.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're looking at – I heard a list. They're like interviewing like 12 coaches. Like Kevin McHale was up there. And it's just like this – they just seem like they don't know what they're doing. Giving out free tattoos to promote the franchise. I don't know. It's just I don't even know what to think about this franchise. It's such a clown show.
They have no direction.
Yeah, they have no direction. And I think Yeager would be a good fit there in a sense because he was with Marc Gasol for all those years. He knows how to work with a center, but I feel like they need to start over. Get some, trade Boogie, get some young players, and then get a young coach in there. Maybe someone like Blatt or I don't know. One of these other coaches they're looking at.
Yeah, I agree. I would think cleaning house would make the most sense for them. Trade Cousins, probably get 2 or 3 first-round picks. Then, maybe trade Collison as well. Try to trade some pieces on the team. Not the super young guys like Willie Cauley-Stein, but, and then get a good head coach and, decide on what you want to be. Decide what type of team you're going to be going forward, what you're going to do. Like, they're just, like you said, all over the place, interviewing a ton of guys. You don't really know if this team's trying to compete for the playoffs, if they're trying to have a bad season. They're just all over the place, and their moves don't always make sense at all.
Yeah, and it's like, why would you draft Cauley-Stein when you have Boogie Cousins? Cauley-Stein, you can't stretch the floor with him. He can guard fours, but he can't shoot. So offensively, it's going to hurt you. And then defensively, I feel like he's a good NBA center in the sense that he can protect the rim, he can run the floor, kind of like DeAndre Jordan, all that stuff. But why would you draft him if you have Boogie Cousins? And those are the type of moves that they've made. Drafting Ben McLemore, he's been a flop. I feel like he's still good. He just needs to, like, all these guys. Anybody who goes to Sacramento, I feel like, they're good. They're just not in a good situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
I feel like if you're getting drafted by Sacramento, you can't feel good because they just have not shown a lot of success developing players.
Yeah, I think they're hands down the most embarrassing franchise. They're by. I mean, I don't even know if anybody's even close to them anymore. Brooklyn's making. The Knicks are still close. But Brooklyn's made strides. I think they've hired good people. The Knicks are still close because Phil Jackson wants to hire a coach, but he's out in Montana right now, on a sabbatical, pulling a LeBron, just like taking a break. But I still think Sacramento's head and shoulders above the rest of the NBA in terms of just being a straight circus.
They could honestly they'd be a 5-star reality show.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
like how many times this year was it reported that George Karl was going to get fired at the end of the week, or they're making changes, and nothing happened. And then finally it does at the end of the season. But it's a mess over there. They need to clean up. They need to get some discipline from top to bottom. But let's get on to the funnest part of this podcast, and that's going to be our superhero comparisons. So if you guys didn't know, Captain America Civil War came out yesterday. Great Marvel movie. I'm probably going to go see it later tonight, but we're going to give you our NBA player comparisons to the superheroes in the movie. John, you want to start it off?
All right. So I'm handling Team Iron Man. Obviously, you're handling Team Captain America. So for Iron Man, I said LeBron James. Iron Man is one of the focal points in this movie, so why not have one of the focal, one of the main players of the NBA? And so I chose LeBron James, because he's been basically healthy his entire career. We all thought he was going to break down last year when he had the back injury and everything, and then he took the 2 weeks off. So we thought maybe this was the beginning of the end for LeBron, but he's playing extremely well in the playoffs. He's looking just as good as he's ever been. He would have been MVP. He would have gotten some MVP votes if it wasn't for Steph Curry's incredible year. War Machine, I chose Blake Griffin just because War Machine has a lot of versatile weapons. Blake Griffin is a versatile player, and when I think of War Machine, I just think of a strong, athletic NBA player, and that's why I chose him.
Talking about Iron Man for LeBron James, I also think it's a great pick because Tony Starks and LeBron James are both cocky. They show a little bit of cockiness, and LeBron was never afraid to show that, and Tony Starks isn't either. So I think that makes that a great fit as well. And I love the pick for War Machine for Blake Griffin. Like you said, War Machine, I feel like has so many different weapons to attack you with, and he kind of still has that aggressive power, just like Blake Griffin has. I think he showed it in the first round series against the Blazers before he got hurt. So nice picks, John.
All right, so going forward, Black Panther. This one came quick to me. I feel like I'd have more of a tough time with this, but I chose Karl-Anthony Towns because Black Panther, it's his first appearance in the movie. But going forward, I think they've already released that he's going to have a few movies. So I kind of figured, this is Karl-Anthony Towns' rookie season. He came on strong, already an elite player, or borderline elite, I guess you could say. And I think going forward, he's going to be a mainstay in the NBA, and he's going to be a big name player. So that's why I chose Cat. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, I love that pick too. Just like you mentioned, it's the first time Black Panther's making an appearance in the Marvel universe, I guess, in the movies. So, and Cat definitely made his appearance this year in the NBA. So, and they're both very, I guess, powerful characters. So, good pick.
Black Widow, I had a tougher time with. I chose Dwayne Wade because whenever I see Black Widow fight in the movies, I didn't read the comics as a kid, but I know whenever I see her fight, she's very crafty. So I chose Wade because Wade is obviously getting older, but he's such a crafty player still. He's got that nice Euro step down, and he's got crafty ball handling on the baseline. He's got the nice post moves. So do you have anybody else in mind for that, or do you like that pick?
I know I like that pick because I feel like Black Widow and D-Wade are both quick. They're good in small spaces. They're kind of deceptive. They definitely try to confuse people. So you see D-Wade doing that, even though he's in his mid-30s, he's still crossing up players, making moves, and he's getting to the rim at ease sometimes. And he's not doing it because of his athleticism anymore. It's just because he's just got a high basketball IQ, and he's kind of just playing with the opponent, just like Black Widow.
Right, exactly. So the next one, Division. I had a tough time with this. I originally had Kevin Durant because the thing with division is he wants everybody to he wants like world peace and stuff. And I know Kevin Durant and people were talking about him being the Reaper or something, or what was the nickname they gave him like 4 years ago? And he was
The Slim Reaper.
Yeah, Slim Reaper, and he didn't like it. Because he wanted to be called the servant, I think, because he was like wanted to help people and stuff. So I originally said KD, but I know you have KD on one ear, so we'll talk about that later. So I ended up going with Rajon Rondo just because he led the league in assists this year. He's always a great passer, so that was my choice for the division.
Yeah, that's not bad. I definitely could see the KD one too. They definitely have that similar feel to them. They're both like good. You could tell they're good-hearted.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Rajon Rondo is good-hearted after what he said to that rep, but and so the last pick, I chose Spider-Man. I got your help with this one. I was having a tough time with Spider-Man too, but I chose the Greek Freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo, because, like you said, he kind of glides through the air, and he is. I think what didn't they call? I feel like I know they called me Amazing Spider-Man. I thought I was going to say half man, half amazing, but that was Vince Carter. But yeah, Giannis is just kind of like gliding, and he's just
you could easily confuse Giannis gliding to the rim as somebody web slinging.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he's always a fun player to watch. Can do a lot of things too. Spider-Man doesn't just fly. He's got the web, and he's got the he's obviously incredibly strong. So Giannis, versatile player, just like Spider-Man's a versatile superhero. But enough with me. Let's see what you have for Team Captain America.
Team Captain America. I will say this though, my alliance is with Team Iron Man going forward. Just so you know, I'm doing this just for the show. But for Captain America, I had Kevin Durant. I felt like this is a good pick right here because KD, he's like the American hero, but every once in a while, he's not afraid to show like his dark side or bad side. Like if you step to him, I think he showed it in the Dallas series. He wasn't afraid to throw a hard foul. So I think that's a good fit. And, Captain America, especially in this movie, he's protecting Bucky Barnes. That's like his sidekick and his main partner. So I felt like Westbrook was a good pick here. Bucky's kind of like off the chains a little bit because he was brainwashed. Westbrook wasn't brainwashed, but sometimes.
But he's crazy. Westbrook definitely has a screw loose. So that's I like both of those.
Yeah, and you figure Bucky's kind of like not even human. I would say Westbrook's not human, so I felt like that matched up. Then Hawkeye, Archer on point, hits crazy shots. I feel like Kyle Korver from long range, maybe not as much this season or in the playoffs, but last season and years before that, he's dead on, spot on, just like Hawkeye.
I was surprised you said Korver. When you said Hawkeye, I immediately thought either Klay Thompson or Steph Curry.
That is funny you say Klay Thompson because I have on my notes, I have Korver and then I have a slash and says Klay Thompson next to it in case I change my mind.
Okay.
Yeah. I felt like Klay would have been a good pick too because he's not, that superstar player, but he's in that second tier, kind of like Hawkeye. He's not like that superstar superhero, but he's still important enough that he matters. And then Falcon, I felt like this is somebody that's a high flyer. He doesn't have a ton of skills yet. He still needs to work on his stuff, to be a better superhero. So I felt like Zach LaVine. He spends most of his time in the air, just like Falcon. So I felt like they matched up.
Yeah, I like that. I like that pick. That's a good choice.
And then Sharon Carter. I feel like this is a good. I picked CJ McCollum because Sharon Carter, not really many people knew who she was before the movie. I think she had like a small appearance in one of the Captain America movies. Just like before this season, not many people knew who CJ McCollum was. We dealt with injuries. He didn't really have a big role in Portland. This year, he stepped onto the scene. People are going to know who he is. And, Carter doesn't have any superpowers. CJ McCollum's not super athletic. He's crafty. He uses basketball IQ. So I felt like it's a good match.
Yeah, I like all your picks, and I thought those were all spot on. I especially like the KD, Captain America, and Bucky Barnes, Russell Westbrook. I think those are both spot on. So great work.
Yeah, and I still got a few more guys on my team. Got Ant-Man as Isaiah Thomas. John, help me with this one.
You got a big team.
I know. I
didn't realize that. I thought. All right, sorry. Keep going.
No, that's cool. I know that other one only has 5 and this one has 7. I don't know if that's fair. I guess I'll see in the movie later. But Ant-Man for Isaiah Thomas, even though they're both small, they pack a punch. Isaiah Thomas hits shots all the time that I feel like he has no business hitting at all. And Ant-Man, I think, being such a small superhero, most people think he has no business doing anything. So I feel like it's a good match.
Yeah, that was my immediate thought when I saw there's a few guys where I looked at him, I was like, oh, that's this person. But when I saw Ant-Man, I was immediately like Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah. And then Scarlet Witch, this is an interesting character. I think not many people know much about her, but I felt like DeMarcus Cousins, John helped me with this one as well. We kind of worked on this end. We felt like Cousins, he started off bad just like Scarlet Witch, and then he's kind of worked his way back to being good and getting the most of his talent, but there's still more work for him to do to get that full potential.
Yeah, I feel like when he came to the league, people were like, "Oh, this guy's just a loudmouth. What he's a prima donna, whatever." But then he started playing so well, and people saw how talented he was. And now I feel like people just feel bad for him because he's and they see him as a good guy now because he's in such a crappy situation in Sacramento.
And they could feel bad for Scarlet Witch because she lost her brother in the last movie. So
Yeah, and she lost her parents as a kid, right?
Yep, correct. So she's definitely, people feel bad for her. But John, did you see this movie yet, or you plan on seeing it?
No, and I totally forgot it was out this weekend. I might actually hit up some friends and see if they want to see it tonight because I don't have anything going on tonight. I really want to see that. I'm sure it's gonna be packed on a Saturday night, but I really want to see it. I think the reviews are really good so far. I'm big on the Marvel movies, so I definitely looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to see it tonight after the basketball games are over with. And like you said, I think it's got 90% plus on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a pretty hard thing to do. So I'm pretty excited to see this movie. I heard it's getting a lot of reviews that it might be the best Marvel movie ever. I don't know if you saw Deadpool, but Deadpool was really good.
Deadpool was fantastic. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna buy that on Blu-ray. Deadpool was fantastic. So yeah, I think that's probably the best Marvel movie I've seen. Seeing Iron Man the first time was always awesome because I loved Iron Man as a kid. So that one has high expectations whenever I see a Marvel movie. I kind of hold it up to that standard, but I didn't know that they said it was that good. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it. It's probably gonna be a great movie.
Yeah, Deadpool. Just talking about Marvel movies a little bit more. That was honestly such a good all around movie. Like, it had good action, and that shit was so funny.
Yeah, it was just nothing like the rest of the Marvel. Like most of the Marvel movies were so corny, and I feel like they made this movie kind of making fun of their own brand. Like in Deadpool, I feel like they were making fun of the corniness of the Marvel movies, and it was so fantastic. I think that was a great movie. Ryan Reynolds did such a great job. Deadpool is probably my favorite superhero now. I used to play when I first got my PS3. One of the first games we got was Marvel Ultimate Alliance.
I had that too on my
Yeah,
Xbox.
and I used to love playing with Deadpool and that, and playing with Black Panther once we unlocked them. I really started to like those guys when I got that game, and after seeing that Black Deadpool, I was like, oh, this guy's definitely my favorite now.
Yeah, no, you definitely got me wanting to play that game. They need to come out with something new. But yeah, go check out the new Captain America movie from OTG. But that wraps it up for today. Great show, John, and thanks everybody for listening.
All right, take it easy.